Alright, I hope you guys are ready to hear a 300 sub channel yap about the fictional world, cause this is the video that I do that. So I make conlangs for my fictional world, but this video will only go over one of my conlangs, that being Yukini. It is the official language of Yukinistan and some other places, and is the de facto lingua franca in the planet of Lysiarth. How did it get so widespread? Well, let's look into its history. Yukini is a Northern Hellenistic language in the Proto-Mesozoic language family. So Yukini starts to get its individuality at year 10 of PAE, Post-Atajan Empire. And by the way, Ataja in this universe is basically like the Rome in ours. But anyways, Northern Hellenistic tribes begin to move upwards in seeking refuge from the wars happening within the empire. However, Northern Hellenistic tribes began to take over Axumon territory as their own. This would start the Axumon-Yukini Wars. After the wars, Yukini would become the main language in the area, replacing Axumon entirely in the region. The settlers tried to make the language more accessible to the Axumon tribes, but this failed miserably as most of them still stuck to their native tongue. Also, the name Yukini comes from the largest Hellenistic tribe up north, being the Yukini. Anyways, something that makes Yukini separate from the other Hellenistic language is its vocabulary. While the majority of its vocabulary comes from Hellenistic, a good chunk also come from Atajan and Axumon, with a couple words coming from other language families like the Vadravan family. By the late 1200s, the United Kingdom of Yukinistan would be formed. This marked the beginning of modern Yukini as the language became more widespread. By the early 1700s, Yukinistan would start to colonize the new world of Kanasa and the southern parts of Mesorira, specifically the Varnite realm. Oh, and the land of the Axumon are still colonies of the Yukini. By the 20th century, Yukini would become the official language of 3 countries and the de facto language of also 3 countries. Countries with the most significant influence in Yukini are Trevicia, Kralandia, Axaboni, Vanuatini, and Salpan. By 1985, there would be around 55.4 million native speakers in Yukini, with estimates saying that there are around 70 million to 100 million who speak it as a second language. Alright, here we go with the phonology. Yukini has 13 vowels and 25 consonants. Although there are some variations of Yukini, seeing as, they had a global empire in Lysiarth. For example, traditional Yukini often pronounces the R's, whilst modern Yukini, or the Yukini in Yukinistan and Axumoni, don't tend to pronounce the R's. Additionally, traditional Yukini also uses the eset, whilst regular Yukini doesn't. So here's an example sentence. In MSY, this would be read as Umilitarn ist dem Beste in der Welt, while traditional Yukini it would be pronounced as Umilitarn ist dem Beste in der Welt. They sound kind of similar, but it's traditional Yukini is American English, whilst regular Yukini is like British English or Standard English. Think of it like that. Alright, and then there's Kralandian Yukini. They tend to stress the vowels or the beginning vowels in the words. So, have an example sentence again. In MSY, you would usually say Eamde ad Kraine, and then in Kralandian Yukini, you would say Eamde ad Kropeia. Kropeia is slang in Kralandian Yukini. It means like a brothel or a pub, but any gathering place in Kralandia. And then there's Varnite Yukini. This is pretty special as it acts as like a Creole. For example, in MSY, the casual phrase is "Hey, how are you?" is "Haya Khromandu," and then in Varnite is "Vasaya Manze." It's combining elements of Varnite and Yukini together. Alright, and this leads to the orthography. Yukini uses the Atajan alphabet. This is Lysiarth Latin to write its letters. Yukini has 28 letters. Although for Trevisian, it can technically be 29 if you count the etset. Now on to grammar. Grammar. In normal statements, Yukini is subject, verb, object, but for question, it is verb, subject, object, and that works for all verbs. To show possession, you'd use the possessive pronoun before the object. So for example, my book is mein Bach. When U and W are next to each other, they pronounce the U. When T and H are next to each other, they pronounce da. J is pronounced as a y, and W is pronounced as v. So Yukini has reflexive verbs An example is akontirve, you realized, like you realized to yourself. So to conjugate a verb or a reflexive verb like this, you'd usually use the reflexive pronoun before the verb, and then whatever tense the verb states it needs to be in. So you realized in the past would be te acontema. Yukini is also gendered with fem endings and masculine / neuter endings. Fem endings in words have a as second to last vowel, or just the last vowel in the word in general. And then for mas / neuter, usually the same thing but with e. So e as second to last vowel, or just the last vowel in the word. Yukini has 7 pronouns: e, tu, hen, hier, wir, du, te. Alright, so going back to nouns, sorry about this. So for fem words, to show plurality, you actually add an an to the end of the word. And then for mask or neuter, you usually add an en to the end of the word. So for example, Jugendar is Jugendaren, and Lorraine is Lorraine. Alright, so onto the number system. Yukini uses a base 10 number system, nothing special to it. So it's kind of like English, Spanish, and all other languages that uses a base 10 number system. And that's it. That's my slideshow of my fictional language. If you stuck around for this long or just enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel or share it to a friend that may enjoy this too. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.